We got some really fun replies, and I think if I had to answer myself, it would definitely be a combination out of all of you when I was in your shoes. All right, everyone. So to get started, welcome to our April workshop. Let's get college ready. 3 things juniors should be doing now to get ready for college applications. So before I begin, I would just like to introduce myself or really reintroduce myself. So hello, everyone. I'm Aneth, your coach, and really the person on the other side of the text messages you get. It's so good to see y'all. I'm pretty sure there's a couple of familiar faces in here. Today, I'm also joined by our moderator, Sarah, who will be helping us, helping things run smoothly. So today, it's all about getting a better understanding of the college admission process and really what can you do now to really strengthen your college applications. Essentially, the goal for today is to talk about things that we can do right now in order to, one, take advantage of specific opportunities that can be used right now to really strengthen your college profile. So you don't really have to think about it later next year when it might be a little bit too late. And we also want to decrease our stress related to specific parts of the application because later you will have a lot of things going on that you will probably want to give your full attention to. So we're going to start off with getting a little bit of a peek into what college admissions looks like and how they work, and then move on to 3 things you can do right now to strengthen your applications, and then finish off with a goal setting activity. But before we get started, I'd like to remind you all of today's raffle. So we have another mini raffle during today's workshop. Again, this is in addition to the long-term raffle that we announced over text. So to be eligible for the $25 gift card, all you need to do is to keep your camera on, with the exception of turning it on and off when you need to and such. So also, please remember to change your Zoom name to your first and last name or drop your name in the chat for attendance purposes. To begin, we're going to start off and talk about what college admissions teams are looking for in their applicants. Of course, this varies depending on the type of college and how competitive admissions are, but many different types of student profiles are valued. And today we're going to go deeper into the range of things that impress college admissions teams. So before I show you all this video, I just want to give you a little bit of background. So this exercise that you will see was created to provide some insight into what goes into the decision-making process of admissions officers when they're looking at student applications. Admissions teams are tasked with weighing many different factors, and we will see some of what they are weighing in this video. This isn't literally how decisions are made. They actually read applications individually. It's also not covering all of the factors that are considered about each student, as once again, this varies depending on the college, but it shows some of what is. So listen for things you're already doing to see the value that you do bring. You won't stand out in all these categories, and honestly, that is completely okay. In this hypothetical, some students are going to be accepted, some are going to be waitlisted, and some would be rejected. So you'll see that in this hypothetical university, it is a little bit more competitive, and I know, but I want you all to know that this is not expected by all universities. So we're going to be talking about our thoughts on it afterwards. So feel free to write down any questions or comments that might pop up as you watch this.
If you have taken an exceptionally strong academic program, move up 2 spaces. If you direct the gospel choir at your church, move up 1 space. If you clearly stated that this college is your first choice by making an early decision application and commitment, move up 2 spaces. If your intended major is psychology or pre-med, move back 1 space. If your intended major is Greek, move up 1 space. If you do not know any of your teachers well enough to ask for a recommendation, move back 2 spaces. If, when you word processed your college essay, you forgot to change the name of the college you are applying to, move back 3 spaces. If you are a legacy, move up 2 spaces. If you did not write the optional college essay, move back 1 space. If the topic of your college essay was sports as a metaphor for life, move back 1 space. If you wrote the essay of the year, the one that was passed around the office, move up 2 spaces. If you plagiarized your college essay and got caught, sit down. You're out of the competition entirely. If you'll be the first in your family to attend college, move up 2 spaces. If you attended an enriching summer program between your junior and senior years, move up 2 spaces. If you come from a single-parent household and must work part-time to help with expenses, move up 2 spaces. If you have participated in no extracurricular activities, move back 3 spaces. If you have participated in a significant community service project, move up 1 space. If you achieved a gold award in Girl Scouts, move up 2 spaces. If you are a varsity athlete, move up 1 space. If you're all region in a sport, move up another space. If you earned a D in an academic course at the end of your junior year, move back 3 spaces. If you wrote a letter to the college admission officer and explained the extenuating circumstances surrounding a grade of D, move up 1 space. If you decided to protect your GPA by not taking AP classes offered at your school, move back 2 spaces. If you're in the top 10% of your graduating class, move up 2 spaces. If your last name is Gates and the name on the college library is Gates, and it's not a coincidence, move all the way to the front of the line and stay there.
So what are some questions y'all might have after watching this video? Anything you found confusing that may need some clarification? So feel free to unmute or just let me know in the chat. Is there perhaps like a specific reason that a student moved up that surprised you? Maybe something that you found, maybe something that maybe you weren't very happy about that was happening in the video that you might have noticed? Absolutely. Involvement in activities is something that we're definitely going to talk about, which definitely gives you an upper hand when it comes to admissions. Any other things that you all noticed? Absolutely. I know that they mentioned specifically, Matthew says, I noticed that AP classes can have an impact. There's definitely a part in the video where there's that fear of like letting more rigorous classes affect your GPA, but definitely there are some pros and cons to that. We also can definitely talk about that, sometimes the type of classes that you're taking can give you an upper hand versus the grades you have in the classes that you are currently taking. I have a question.
Can I ask a question?
Oh, absolutely. Go ahead.
I didn't understand the last part where the person with the lowest GPA just skipped to the front. I think it was something about a last name or something. I don't know.
Oh, absolutely. So that's something definitely that we're going to talk about. when it comes to definitely a lot of more selective and upper level schools, there is this idea of legacy admissions. And this can be something as much as maybe you have parents that have been going to this, let's say like a family that is known for having gone to the school for many, many years. Or it can be something like maybe you have had a family that went to the school, was quite successful, and then became a a person that gave donations to the school, maybe led to the opening of a center on campus, whether that be like a building. So maybe if you've had a chance to maybe see a college campus, tour any of them. For example, there is a building on campus for us that's called Barnum Hall. Barnum Hall was named after a person that donated to the school. So sometimes when it comes to this, a lot of selective schools will give some sort of advantage to students who are coming in who are related to, say, a person who was a benefactor, I guess, to the school, you could say, which is definitely something that we're going to talk about, absolutely, as it's not something that necessarily applies to every single school. But if you're considering things like more selective schools, definitely something to consider. I'm getting a question about the student who talked about reaching out about their D in a class. Absolutely, something that a lot of schools want to see. Usually maybe you start a freshman year and maybe you're not doing so hot, but you see an upward trend in your grades. That's definitely something that is very, very helpful as you're going into college, because even if you maybe not started off so strong, you're able to show colleges that you put in the effort to get where you wanted to get. Maybe you had a year where there was something like personal reasons why you were unable to really put as much focus as you wish or as much work as you wish in a certain class, which resulted in you getting a lower grade than you really wanted. Being able to provide information to your admissions officer, or really just the school that you're applying to, saying, I noticed that I have this grade in my transcript. I would like to explain why it's there. And really just like being able to say that I am college ready, and this is the reason why maybe it doesn't show in this specific class. So I have another question. Do all those factors have the same amount of impact for all colleges? They absolutely don't. So if you'll notice, this video definitely is more specific towards more selective colleges. So somewhere with like a college where maybe it's like a little bit smaller, acceptance rates can be anywhere from, I believe, 30% and lower tends to be about selective schools. These are the schools where they might be a little bit more nitpicky about what you're doing, whether it be your extracurricular grades, and really just your overall application, really considering all the factors. If you're going to more, say, less selective school, maybe your local college, and your local state college, these are definitely things that might be considered for, say, things like scholarships and something more like merit scholarships, but definitely won't be as specific and won't be such a huge like weight on a lot of these factors that were talked about in the video. I got another question. I would say if you want to talk to an admissions officer about, as we talked before, about what your grades might look like, and if there were any issues regarding to why you got the grade that you had in class, reaching out, definitely seeing to see who would be the admissions officer for your area. So you're able, so a lot of schools, you're able to look at what's the admissions officer that's in charge of, maybe like if you're in the New York area, California, or sometimes it's like the Midwest. So maybe doing a little bit more research will allow you to figure out who's the person that you want to contact in order to be able to specify what your situation was like in school. Just some other things that I want to highlight about the video is that you might have seen some things related to majors. Absolutely, as you are going into the college application process, you're definitely starting to think, what do I want to major in? And really, maybe what kind of schools are well known for the major that I want to go into. So you might see that sometimes if you're applying to a school, and let's say you're looking at a school that is very popular for its business management major, this may lead to having a more competitive pool for those specific students that are applying to the business major, versus let's say that they have an astrophysics major that's not very competitive. You'll be placed, I guess, in a less competitive pool as you are applying to this college. So definitely those are some other things that you might want to consider. Let's say if you're applying to a specific major that's very popular, or maybe you're applying to like the honors college at a specific school. Those are definitely some things that will change the selectivity and really that also the competitiveness of getting into the specific college. So I'd like to invite you all to take a couple of minutes and reflect on this video and think about the question that's on the slide. So what does it seem like admissions teams value, whether this be just based on the video or what about some things that really just pop out to you or what you consider to be admissions teams value. So in a second, there will be a Jamboard link that will be dropped in the chat. And feel free to add your replies to this question by adding a sticky note. As you're filling this out, I also want you all to think about what are some other things about a student's profile that can make them move up the line or down the line. This could be things that probably were not necessarily mentioned in the video. You can add your own thoughts on the Jamboard as well. So feel free to get on there. If you have any issues with getting on the Jamboard and putting in any replies, also feel free to use the chat. All right, I'm seeing some pretty good replies here. Extracurricular activities, absolutely. That's definitely something that will definitely spice up your application, especially when you want maybe a little bit more well-rounded application. Being able to see that you are doing things, pursuing your interests is something that's very important to admissions teams. Involvement, once again, definitely how involved you are, whether that be in your extracurricular activities or maybe something that you're passionate about. Yes, I know that I'm seeing a comment about digital footprint. Yes, I know that especially in recent times, that can be something that's very concerning for students, thinking really back about what is your behavior on social media and how can that impact your future? And absolutely, that's definitely something you should consider because it can be something that as much as we wish it wasn't true, it is something that can impact you later on. But I also want you to consider the fact that not all things social media related are detrimental to your application. So maybe if you're a person that has a social media account where you raise awareness for something, or you're making some sort of a community based around some sort of value, some sort of belief, just something that you're passionate about, that actually can help you in the application cycle because you're showing that you're showing initiative and really just trying to build this community and leadership qualities. So definitely considering some of those pros and cons about what specifically you are doing in the social media atmosphere, and how can maybe those have positive and negative effects on your application. Yes, legacy admissions is definitely something that we saw. Unfortunately, that is definitely a reality for a lot of more selective schools, but that's definitely something that definitely don't want you going in blind knowing that this is not true because it is very much a reality, but there's definitely other qualities about yourself that can give you a little bit of a leg up that maybe something like a legacy admission or having legacy might not, especially with a lot of schools moving away from those legacy admissions. So demonstrated interest is definitely something that we'll probably talk about soon, and we can also continue to talk about later on about what is something you can do to show your interest in your school. These are all some really great answers here. So we really talked a lot about many different things, whether it be your grades, something as recent as what's it like to be on social media and how can that affect you, and things like how do I explain maybe some of my record to my admissions team in a way that shows that regardless of maybe what's on paper, there's definitely you definitely have a lot of potential and you are showing it in other ways in explaining yourself. Absolutely. So after seeing this video, how do you feel to see college admissions laid out this way? Is there anything that felt unfair or surprising? I know we talked about it recently, but even after seeing the Jamboard and maybe like letting it sit a little bit, are there any other things that you noticed that maybe you weren't quite happy about? Maybe you didn't quite expect something to be so competitive? What are some other things maybe that came to mind as you're considering how admissions might be laid out specifically in this video or just in general as you think about them? Feel free to unmute, let me know in the chat. I have a raised hand. You can unmute and let me know.
I wanted to say that it feels pretty familiar since it's been reiterated a lot in school. The only thing, well, that it didn't really shock me, but the legacy admissions to see how it's developed and played out.
Absolutely. I think especially when I was looking at this video, something that really popped out to me is that definitely there's a lot of things that maybe we don't consider when we're going through the college application process. Definitely, we're always told like grades, school, going to your extracurriculars. But at the same time, there are some things that are definitely out of your hands that might be affecting your college application process. And that's exactly why we want to bring it up, to make sure that you are very much aware of this, and also talking about other ways that you can, once again, leverage your specific experiences and background in ways that maybe legacy admissions won't help others. I'm seeing, I was surprised about the single parent household being a factor in college admissions. Definitely, I would say that there's a lot of special circumstances and special backgrounds that can be helpful and maybe like might be holding you back in some ways when you're doing applications. For some schools, I will be completely honest, for some schools, things, especially selective schools, there are some definitely ways for you to leverage your background, and they want to see you being able to succeed regardless of your background in this atmosphere. And that's definitely that a lot of schools are doing nowadays, actively trying to recruit in a way students that have backgrounds that traditionally would not be seen in these selective schools. And maybe in some places that might look like maybe your background might be a little bit difficult to work with when it comes to admissions, but in other schools that might actually help you out. Grades don't define a person, but I can think of any other way for colleges to know how you are doing in school otherwise. Absolutely. As much as we definitely talk about things like grades don't define you, we also have to consider things like, regardless of the fact that as much as grades are very much important, it's also important to consider how you got there. So maybe you have really, really, really good grades, but you might have taken some of the less rigorous courses, and maybe you were hoping that those really good grades were going to help you in, say, getting to a more selective university. Maybe you have really, really good grades, but being able to show that maybe you got like a little bit, maybe one letter grade less than what you expected, but you took the rigorous courses, that might help you show a school more that you're college ready, rather than taking classes that maybe might be a little bit easier. So maybe that's not something that we like to hear. I personally was not something that I wanted to hear when I was in high school, but rigor is definitely something that's very much valued in schools, because they want to see how you are handling difficult situations, and maybe just something that makes you work a little bit harder to get to the type of accomplishment that you want. These are all definitely great things that you all noticed. So these are all tough things to consider about the college admissions process, and many parts might feel a little bit surprising and unfair. And this is why we are here once again to talk about it. And make sure you're not going to this process blindly, because we want you to be aware about really all the factors that you want to consider as you're going through this process. So there's a lot we can do to make sure you are all prepared for what might feel like a tricky process, but we will get through this together. So in the video, the initial deciding factor for where the students began was GPA. So academics and academic performance are important as they are able to show college readiness. However, there are other ways to show college readiness, such as the type of courses you take, whether they are honors or not, and also activities such as academic competitions that show you are learning outside of the classroom. So there are also ways beyond academics to impress your admissions teams. Some of them are listed on this slide. So things like responsibility. Are you having to support your family or your community in some ways? Involvement. How are you engaged in things of your interest, whether this be, as we said, like academic competitions, or maybe you're involved in advocacy, something that you are very passionate about and that you value and you're actively doing outside of school. And also things like character. At the end of the day, your application is a way for you to demonstrate who you are, why you are who you are, what you value, and really what are you going to do about it. So next, we're going to be talking about 3 things you can put your focus on this year. These are things that will help strengthen your profile for the colleges and help decrease your stress next year when you'll be focused on applying. So the 3 things that you can focus on right now are extracurriculars, recommendation letters, and the SAT or ACT. So the SAT has a star because the requirements for this are evolving. So together, we're going to discuss whether or not you should take either and what are the pros and cons associated with either decision. Think of this as a moment where you can add the frosting and sprinkles to your cake. So basically, your academics are, in essence, like think of the base of a cake. And being able to add things like extracurriculars and having really good recommendations and maybe taking the SAT or ACT are ways for you to really spice up that cake, whether it be like, think of that as once again, your frosting and your sprinkles to that cake. So first, we're going to be talking about extracurriculars. So what counts as an extracurricular anyway? Let me know your thoughts, and you can unmute or let me know in the chat. I'm seeing sports, programs. Yes. So what are some programs maybe that you could be doing outside of school that count as extracurriculars? School clubs, absolutely. Volunteering, that's a big one, especially nowadays where schools definitely want to see you involved in your free time. Community service, anything that's not academic related, like mandatory classes. Absolutely, but there's definitely some ways that academics and extracurriculars can be blended together. But absolutely, there's many, many, many things. Summer jobs, absolutely. Jobs are also definitely a really good answer. So these are all great answers, and you are all correct. All of these are definitely fit under the umbrella term of extracurriculars. And these can be, as you said, after school clubs, sports, community service, work, and even personal projects. There's also bonus points if you hold a leadership position, have been part of the activity for a long period of time, and maybe founded the club or business. There's definitely some things that schools are looking into and can give you a leg up, especially if there are some parts of your application that maybe you personally feel are not very strong, but you're able to show that you are dedicated to, say, a project by being, say, a head of the project or a coordinator. These are all things that schools are looking into that will definitely help you out as you are applying. And I'd just like to add a little 2 cents on this. So to be honest, many of these activities are things I personally never consider extracurricular activities, because my definition for extracurriculars when I was in high school was pretty limited to basically any after-school activity offered by the school itself. So my definition was like sports, science olympiad, art club, things like that. It really wasn't until I was in college that I realized that extracurriculars really is such a huge like umbrella term, for doing pretty much anything that involves you actively being involved in something of your interest. So this could be volunteering at a hospital, volunteering or working with a nonprofit, advocacy, doing personal projects like photography or coding, event programming, and much more. So really there is a lot that you can do that counts as an extracurricular, and really the starting point is pursuing what you value or find interesting. So not too long ago, I sent you all a brag sheet activity. The goal of the brag sheet was to help you start to think about experiences and strengths that you'll bring to whatever college you attend. It also helps you consider your network of support and potential recommenders. This was also an opportunity to reflect on who you are, your life experiences, and what makes you unique. Altogether, these pieces will start to form a narrative, which is a story about who you are that you'll be sharing with admissions teams. You really want to give yourself time to reflect on this and get some thoughts on paper, as they will come in handy as you write up college applications. So honestly, I was a little bit stumped when I personally saw this activity. I really had to take a moment and put myself in the shoes of my high school self. So I'm sure this was probably a feeling for a couple of y'all, and that's completely okay. I think that one way I started to think about this is to, well, I think I shared this actually with a couple of y'all, is to really think about how my friend would describe me. So often people will notice qualities that you didn't know that you had yourself. And that's maybe because you might need to be a little bit kinder to yourself. And other times it really is because maybe it's just part of your character. So for example, maybe you like volunteering at a local nursing home. To you, it might be a fun thing to do because you like people. But to others, it shows that you value about being an active member of your community and care for the people in your community. So I invite you to consider that perspective as you continue working on this sheet and maybe even get started. So you'll be putting extracurriculars on paper, but you'll also have a lot of other opportunities like the personal statements and shorter supplemental essays to talk about yourself in other ways. So for this exercise, the goal is to consider what will be the main points of the narrative you want to share with colleges. During this exercise, you want to reflect who you are while also considering the impression you will be making on the admissions team. So what main points you may want to lean on more is up to you to decide, but remember that how and what you choose to share should empower you. Your extracurricular activities may be showing what you are doing, but the other pieces of your application provide you the opportunity to explain why. Why do you do what you do? What do you value? And what kind of student do you want to be at the schools you are applying to? This will be a personal exercise, so there won't be any group sharing. So over the next 4 minutes, I would just like you to create a list of the main points or themes in your narrative. I'll let you know when time's up. gonna give y'all like 15 more seconds, and then we're gonna continue on with the slideshow. And once again, consider things like what are some things maybe that you want the admissions team to really know about you? Maybe is there something that you particularly value, such as do you want to work, say, with a specific group of people, or is there what specific reason that you want to go to this specific school? Is there a specific program that they offer? Is there a specific value that they stand for? What do you want to contribute to the school, and what do you want them to really know about you, who you are as a person, why you are who you are? All right, that seems to be about it for us. Alrighty, so during the past couple of minutes, you have had the opportunity to reflect on how you want to present yourself to the admissions team. For many of you, that includes emphasizing the different extracurriculars that you're involved in. Others may want to work on getting more involved with a club or two. So for students who already have a lot of extracurriculars going on, I like to invite you to take a look at the ideas in the to go deeper column and consider if there are any extracurriculars or other things that you may want to get more involved in. For example, you may want to take on a leadership role. For students who don't have a lot of extracurriculars, you can also take a look at the left column, but you may also want to consider adding on 1 to 2 meaning extracurricular. There's also an article linked on the right that lists a ton of extracurricular ideas, and I believe that should be in the chat as well. So check out these categories and see if there's anything that seems interesting before checking out the potential options listed within that category. However, everyone should be considering things that represent who you are and complement the narrative that you reflected on and really what you want to share about yourself with admissions teams. I'd like you all to take a couple of minutes here to reflect, check out the document, and note anything you might want to follow up on. All right, I'm going to give you all like 30 more seconds, and then we can discuss what are some things that maybe you might have come up with. All right, so what is something that this activity may be inspiring you to do, or what are some next steps you're considering after looking at these documents? Feel free to unmute or let me know in the chat. So some of these things that you can follow up, that you can probably follow up on, say you're in an extracurricular that you have been a member of for a while, but you want to be more than just a member. Maybe there's a specific project that you want to take on with the group. You might want to consider what are some leadership roles that you can join or become a part of in order to really make a bigger impact that maybe you want, that was maybe the goal of why you joined this group per se. I'm seeing a comment, find more leadership roles to partake in and strengthen the things I've created. Absolutely. Leadership roles are definitely very, very helpful, give you a kind of a little bit of leverage, a little bit of a bonus points, especially in application. But I also would like you all to consider, as you're looking for these leadership roles, think about, why am I joining this leadership role specifically? What am I interested in, and what's the specific reason of why I'm doing this extracurricular? There are so many extracurriculars that you can be a part of, and definitely want you to start to consider maybe what are your interests, what are things you value, and how can you blend those two? So if you feel like you would like to brainstorm some ideas for either getting more involved in your current activities or adding in something new, feel free to send me a text after the workshop and we can talk through some ideas or come up with some together. So moving on to our next thing to leverage right now, we have recommendation letters. So strong recommendation letters give the reader insight into who you are and highlight academic and personal strengths. When you think of someone who can write you a recommendation letter, who comes to mind? Feel free to unmute or chat in your answers. Absolutely, we're having teachers, specifically English, an AP teacher, biology, history. We have mentors. Oh, research mentor is a really good one, actually. Oops, seems like I ran out of space here. Coaches. We have your guidance counselor, absolutely. And that's definitely something that we're going to touch up on as we go through the workshop. Employers, absolutely. Definitely, and being able to show different aspects of yourself through various people is very, very helpful as you're looking at these, at your applications. Yes, absolutely. Any teacher that you know you worked hard in their class. And we're going to definitely talk about that. Really, what are some ways in which you can think of that you can build a better relationship with the people that you want to write your recommendation letters, and what you can do in order to help them write you a good recommendation letter. All right, so we talked about teachers, we talked about guidance counselors, coaches, employers. We pretty much talked about all of them, all of really the people that you can think of that could write you a really great recommendation letter. So in the next couple of minutes, you'll be able to put yourself in the shoes of recommenders and really begin to think of how you can make yourself stand out. You'll go into small groups according to group number on your slides and tasked with discussing what would make you excited to write a student a recommendation letter. Take notes on your slides, as afterwards you'll have an opportunity to share out any interesting insights you discussed. All right, so in this exercise, you were tasked with thinking about if you were a teacher writing a recommendation letter, and really what could a student do to get you excited to write their recommendation letter. So what are some ways that what are some things that a student could do to make you want to write a recommendation letter? You'll be going into groups and discussing this a little bit further. So school counselors are sometimes called college or guidance counselors. These Counselors will be really involved and others will be not so much. But no matter how involved or uninvolved they are, it's important to have a good relationship with your school counselor because there are things that they will have to help you with. And having a positive relationship can really help you work together. So usually the more initiative and investment you show, the more they will make themselves available to you. However, if you're trying to build a relationship and they're not responding, don't take it personal. They're probably just overwhelmed. I also want to make a note that school size does matter in this context. So I understand that building this relationship with your counselor may require different steps depending on your school size. I also know that maybe some schools, depending on school size, might have more counselors. Maybe some schools are a little bit larger and don't really have the amount of counselors that can provide one-on-one time with all their students. So if you're in a small school, you might be able to build a better relationship with your counselor, whether that be due to more one-on-one time, or maybe just being able to chat a couple of minutes every other week as you pass by each other in the school halls. So I was very fortunate that this was the case for me. I went to a very small school and I was able to have just casual conversations with my counselor due to it being a small school, and really was able to build a close relationship with my counselor from the beginning of freshman year. However, I am very well aware that this is not the case for everyone. For students in a large school, you can try reaching out to your counselor via email, getting to school a little bit earlier one day to talk to your counselor before they get wound up in their day-to-day tasks. If this doesn't seem to work, try asking a teacher. They can connect you with your counselor or help you figure out what is the best way to get in contact. I know it sounds like a lot, but it is still helpful in the long run. So it's one less thing off your plate when you're in the peak applications this season next semester. So before we move on to our next and final portion of the workshop, we are going to be taking a short 5-minute break. But before that, I am going to just follow up on some messages I'm seeing here in the chat. Absolutely. I understand that when you are trying to get a hold of counselors, definitely I'm very familiar with some bigger schools, especially in my county, that may have had bigger schools and maybe a couple more counselors, but trying to build that relationship was very difficult because definitely a lot of universities do require a guidance counselor recommendation letter. So it is difficult to build a relationship, but definitely there are some ways for you to reach out, and you don't have to be, I guess, you don't have to be a buddy with your counselor, is what I'm trying to say. You just want them to really just know about you and not to write you that recommendation letter. So reaching out, once again, doing what you did with your teacher, having like maybe, as we said, so we did the brag sheet activity. Maybe you can take what you learned from this about yourself from the brag sheet activity and create kind of like an info sheet about yourself that you can provide to teachers and your counselor, really to kind of like a resume in a sense. Definitely not specifically a resume, but definitely some sort of get to know me sheet, so that you are able to share this with your guidance counselor, share this with your teacher, so that you can kind of, in a way, unfortunately have to maybe speed run that relationship, but that you are able to have a better understanding of each other in some shape or form than just having to ask them for a recommendation letter and never having really spoken. So if you want to talk about some strategies on how you can possibly help make that a reality, build a better relationship with your guidance counselor, we can definitely talk about that. Just shoot me an email and a text. Shoot me a text and we can talk about it later. But in the meantime, take a 5-minute break. Feel free to go to the restroom, have some water, and when we come back, we're going to be talking about the SAT and the ACT and whether or not it's important to take it. We're going to come back in like 10 more seconds. So just going to let you all come back in and then we can keep on going. All right, I hope you all had a nice break. Apologies, I think I might have moved on a little bit further than we are. So welcome back from your break. To continue, we're going to be talking about the last thing you want to consider leveraging, which is taking the SAT or ACT, and questions that can help you decide whether or not you take it. So testing requirements for school have definitely been changing over the last couple of years. And we especially saw this shift after the pandemic began, with more than half of all four-year colleges going test optional. This means that really, as you go into the college application season, you really want to consider, one, what are the testing requirements at the schools that you're looking at? And should you or should you not be taking the SAT or ACT, which can be a very difficult decision to make, as even though test optional is growing, a lot of top universities are continuing to admit a higher percentage of students who choose to submit scores than those who don't. So I would like you all to know, however, that majority of community colleges don't have a testing requirement. So if you are choosing to apply to a community colleges, feel free to check their specific requirements. But I also would recommend for you to look at a couple of four-year colleges, as financial aid at four-year colleges tends to be a little bit higher. So should I take or should I not take the ACT or SAT? That can be a very difficult decision. So to help you make this decision, we've really brought it down to three primary questions to ask yourself. So one, do the schools I want to apply to require it? Two, how does my application compare to those who are typically accepted at these schools? And three, do the scholarships at these schools for or any other schools that you might be looking at require the SAT or ACT? So just a quick note about the scholarships. So some of the big ones, some of the big scholarships, and even some state scholarships still require the SAT or ACT. And if you're planning to apply to these scholarships, you should definitely take a look at their specific requirements. So we want to begin to get a sense of whether the schools you're interested in are test required, test optional, or test blind. And you can find this out by looking at a handful of schools that are on your radar, or any other dream schools that you have on your list. So I want you to read across the columns for each of the schools to see if they've announced their policy. Maybe not specifically right now, but definitely take a look at this as you start to build your list. So you really want to see if they've announced their policy on test optional for fall of 2024, since that's when all of you would be starting college if you went to college straight out of senior year. This is not a full list, so if there is a school that you're interested in that's not part of this list, you can just Google school name, SAT requirements 2024. So just to show you guys what this looks like. So you go down to this website and go to the search bar, and maybe there's a specific school that you are considering, but you're not quite sure if they're test optional. So for example, we're going to go with Tufts. Tufts is test optional up to 2026. So that's definitely a school that you can look into if you are considering applying to schools as only test optional, and maybe choose to not test at all. Maybe there's another school like, let's take a look at MIT. MIT has the SAT required for fall 2024. So if you're considering applying to a school like MIT, definitely would probably want to take the SAT or ACT. Now, this is a tool that I think is really important as you start to consider what schools that you want to apply to, and really what are the considerations really that you want to take of, is it worth taking the SAT or ACT? Is it going to be detrimental to your application if you choose not to? And really what kind of schools that you are looking at, as the SAT or ACT can be very helpful as you look at being more selective schools. So when considering how does my college application compare to those who are typically accepted at the schools on my list, you want to make sure that your application is demonstrating you are at least at the level of a typical admitted student, but ideally want to be a stronger candidate if you are not submitting test scores. So for the sake of time, we are going to skip this activity, but in your own time, you can look at schools and kind of look at what are their GPAs, what's kind of the average GPA of the student that is admitted at this school. So maybe you are considering a school that's a little bit more selective. You might want to look at what are the average GPAs of the students that apply to the school. Especially if you already know your weighted or unweighted GPA, you can go on Google, look up your GPA, and then look up the average GPA of the schools. And there's especially many websites that allow you to see kind of the range of the GPAs of the schools that were admitted, and also show you a more concentrated area of maybe the GPA range for this specific school was 3.6, something along those lines. Really, the takeaway I want you to get from this is that GPA is one piece of your application, but it is an important one. And if you don't submit your SAT or ACT scores, admissions teams will be paying extra attention to grades and courses taken to understand if you are college ready. So moving on to our last question, do the scholarships at these schools or other scholarships you want to apply to require the SAT or ACT? So figuring out the information for this is a bit harder to find, but it is so worth it in the long run, as it can significantly affect how much you pay for college. So you can find this information by really just Googling the information, or you can reach out to the college themselves and ask about their test requirements for scholarships. So by now, you are starting to get a sense of whether or not it would be helpful to submit your SAT or ACT scores when you are applying. So even when it's not required, it's an important part of how you can stand out to schools. So here are some other things that are helpful to keep in mind. So is test taking one of your strengths? If it's not, you can emphasize other elements of your application, such as your GPA, extracurriculars, and more. However, more emphasis on these elements means that you should also give them extra time and extra attention. If you do choose to take either test, there are definitely a variety of ways that you can prepare for this. So you can do an LGR program and attend LGR test prep, which is great because you're provided with classes and accountability and an instructor that you can ask questions to. You can also choose to self-study, which I will just want you to note that this does require a higher degree of self-discipline if this is the route that you do choose to go through, which can be a little bit harder, but it is definitely possible. LGR can also help you get access to fee waivers, so you can ask your guidance counselor at school, since they should have one for you. But if they don't, feel free to ask me and I can get you one. The College Board only allows students one fee waiver for a total of 2 uses. So information about the LGR SAT prep program should have been sent to you. If you have any questions about this, a fee waiver, or really anything else, feel free to text me after the workshop. So really, the main takeaway I want you to get from this is that if any of the schools or scholarships you want to apply to require it, you should take it. If it was strengthening your application in important ways, it's a good idea to take it. And really, if you're not sure at all, you should still probably take it. Really, what I want you to take away from this section is that if there's any reason you feel like testing would add to your application and open up more opportunities for you both academically and financially, you should take the test. So after seeing all these slides, you might still be asking yourself, is there anything else I should be doing this year? So after going over these slides, I did a little bit of self-reflecting of my own. So some things I personally wish I had done when I was preparing for college in my junior year is really do more extracurriculars that interested me. I know that maybe some of the reasons that we are held back from doing some extracurriculars might be that you don't feel comfortable with maybe the environment. For me, it was that I one was very much interested in very male, predominantly male groups and clubs. So that was definitely scary as a woman going into STEM, but definitely now that I think about it, they would have definitely welcomed me into the club with open arms. And that's definitely something that I want you to consider as you're looking at extracurriculars. I also wish I had taken advantage of a lot of other opportunities in my community. For example, I did not know that that extracurriculars were so extensive and there was such a wide variety. So definitely wish I had done a lot more community service and been a part of organizations that held a lot of the values I have and been able to really be a part of that environment. However, there were definitely some things that I did that helped me a lot. So for example, I had a long-term commitment to my extracurricular activities. I did choir for like 6 years, art club for 3, and a college prep organization for 3 years at the time that I was applying. So definitely those long-term commitments helped me. I also served on leadership positions at my club that I was a part of and was pretty heavily involved. And it's something I still do today. So definitely keep those connections open as they can help you in the long run. Finally, I really did take advantage of any test prep opportunities I could get my hands on. So I personally took the ACT, and really I tried to diversify my preparations. So sometimes that looked like Saturday tutoring or doing a practice run at home, and other times it was doing like an ACT Jeopardy on a Tuesday night. So really trying to go slow and steady and really diversifying the way that you are preparing for the exam can help diminish that stress while also preparing you in ways that maybe are going to help you get that score that you really want. So these are all things that I learned and did to prepare for my college application. Your journey might look a little bit different, but I think that just want to highlight long-term commitments, leadership positions, and taking advantage of any opportunities are going to help you in the long run. So for the sake of time, we are going to skip this segment, but if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me after the workshop. So for our last section, we are going to move into some goals related to what you can do over the rest of your junior year and whatever areas feel most important to you. So we sent out this overview of features for strong goal setting over text. As a reminder, setting strong goals means that they are attainable, think realistic, or can I get this done in a timely manner? Incremental, think how can I break this down into steps? And meaningful, think why is this important to me? And specific, what exactly does successful in completing this goal look like? So does anyone have any questions about what this means? Alrighty. So for our last activity, I'm actually going to be following up with you all and talking about what you can do to really what is a goal that you can realistically create for something that you want to do to strengthen your profile or application for this week, this month, and this year. So this is something that I really want you all to start thinking about, and I will be on the lookout for what your ideas are. I'm going to be following up really over the course of this week. If this is something that you're not quite sure about, having some difficulty, if you're feeling stuck and want help identifying goals that are, as we said, attainable, incremental, meaningful, and such, let me know, and we can definitely work on figuring out what are some goals that you can create for yourself. All right, so today was relatively lengthy, but we definitely talked about a lot of things that will be helpful in the coming weeks and months to really help you get ready for your college applications. We're going to be taking steps that will help you strengthen your profile and likely result in making a better impression in colleges. And it will also decrease your stress next year when you go out to fill out applications, which, trust me, you're going to thank yourself for it, preparing, because it is a stressful period for a lot of students. I look forward to connecting with you all about your goals and anything else related to these topics that would be helpful to talk. So reach out anytime soon. One last thing before we go. We'll be dropping a feedback form in the chat, and really we want to hear your thoughts on the workshops, as our goal really is to make sure that these workshops help you with your goals. Don't hesitate to reach out and let us know how we can improve this experience for you. And one last thing before we go, we have our winner for the raffle for today. Karen, congratulations, you won our $25 gift card. I will be reaching out to you soon. So any last questions before we leave? I know that we might have run a little bit over time. Honestly, I'm free for any 5 more minutes if you're free to leave, but if you all have any questions, I'm free for the next 5 minutes to answer anything that you all might have in your mind. You can unmute or send me put it in the chat, or you can just send me a text after the workshop.